celebrating Veterans Day at West Washington. But before we talk about Veterans Day, we should start by explaining and defining what a veteran is. A military veteran is someone who has served or is serving in the United States Armed Forces. A war veteran is someone who has had direct exposure to acts of military conflict. While not everyone that serves in the armed services, which include the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, National Guard, or any of their reserve components, will ever have to face actual combat for their country, all those who serve must be prepared to. When you join the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines, you take an oath, and that's a very serious promise. You solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Making this promise to defend the Constitution of the United States is a very important concept to understand. The Constitution of the United States of America is the supreme law of the United States. It is the source of all government powers, and it also provides important limitations on the government that protects the fundamental rights of the United States citizens. And that oath, which all veterans have taken, goes something like this. I, and then the person will state their name, do solemnly swear that I'll support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. It sounds simple. It's a short phrase. But whether active duty, retired, National Guard, or reserve, everyone has made or will make that same promise and has sworn to protect this country at all costs and sometimes great sacrifice. And that oath, that solemn promise, never expires. It is a solemn promise without an expiration date. Well, Veterans Day is a day that we set aside to reflect and remember and honor those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. The history of what we now call Veterans Day goes back over 100 years. There was a war in Europe. At that time, it was called the Great War. And later, it became known as the First World War. It was a terrible war, as all ours, with great loss of life. It was such a terrible war, it was supposed to be the war to end all wars, because no one could imagine that mankind would ever have a war of that magnitude again. Well, of course, there will always be wars. And the Second World War came about just about 20 years after its predecessor concluded, and it was much worse than the first. But at the end of the First World War, there was a treaty signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, and this day was called Armistice Day, which literally means to stop fighting. After World War II, we began to acknowledge this day as Veterans Day, and we aren't alone celebrating this day. In Poland, it is their Independence Day. In Belgium, it is the Day of Peace. Armistice Day is observed as a national holiday in France, and Great Britain refers to it as a Remembrance Day. It's hard to comprehend that a war that ended over 100 years ago gives us a time to reflect on those that serve and those that are serving today, in the air, on land, or sea. Each branch of the service takes great pride in their branch of service, and whether it's the Navy, Army, Air Force, or Marines, each mission and role play a critical part of our national defense. Personally, I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and like all veterans, I felt compelled to do something more. And like all veterans, I felt that some things were worth fighting for, and that someone had to be prepared to do that. Veterans have stood their post all around the globe with values of honor, courage, and commitment. And honor is a standard of ethical and moral conduct. Honor is many things. Honor requires many things. Honor means integrity, never lying, cheating, or stealing. And honor means being accountable for your actions and holding others accountable for theirs. Courage, simply stated, is honor in action. Courage is a moral strength, the will to do what is right regardless of the conduct of others. Courage means willingness to take a stand and for what's right in spite of the consequences. And commitment. Veterans have the attitude of never giving up, never giving in, and never willingly accept second best. Commitment never has an expiration date either. And above all, veterans learn leadership traits of judgment, justice, dependability, integrity, decisiveness, tact, initiative, enthusiasm, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, and endurance. Every veteran has a personal story and a history of their service that's unique to them, although some might be reluctant to share it. But every veteran does appreciate our gratitude for their sacrifice and commitment to defending our country and our way of life.